We have 5 seconds penalty.
No, it cannot be, Ricky. Do I deserve to be out of the points? No, tell them. It is unacceptable. They need to wait until the race is finished and discuss with me.
Where do we even begin with this one? That Australian Grand Prix was a total mess. Yeah, F1 and Liberty Media got the spectacle they've been hoping for, but at what cost? 3 red flags? Well, even 4 if you count Hulkenberg's stopped car after the checkered flag, and 8 DNFs. It doesn't get messier than that. And to make it even worse, they decided to penalize a driver for an incident on a lap that F1 later stated to have never happened. And this penalty hasn't gone down well amongst the grid. So yet again, the drivers take a stance against the FIA after all the disastrous decisions during the race, with Carlos Sainz being the main man after receiving the controversial 5-second penalty. Carlos Sainz was given the 5-second penalty that upset him because the FIA stewards decided he had enough time to avoid touching Fernando Alonso, even though Alonso felt the punishment was too harsh. Sainz fell from 4th to 12th in a chaotic Melbourne race that ended behind a safety car due to a 5-second penalty he called the most unjust he had ever seen. The Ferrari driver sent Alonso spinning after the last standing restart that included numerous huge errors as drivers had one more chance to attack on cold tyres with just 2 laps remaining. At the time, it seemed that it had cost Alonso a podium finish as the Aston Martin driver dropped out of the top 10, albeit he quickly reclaimed the position owing to a red flag being immediately thrown and the positions being reset for the final restart, which concluded the race behind the safety car. The stewards, though, penalised Sainz for the incident, regardless of Alonso's lucky reprieve. They found that despite Alonso being significantly ahead at the first bend, Sainz put too much speed into the corner and drove into Alonso on the exit. The stewards observed that this happened on the opening lap of the restart, and that they typically take a more lenient view of incidents. However, in this particular case, notwithstanding the fact that it was the equivalent of a first lap incident, we considered that there was sufficient gap for car 55 to take steps to avoid the collision and failed to do so, they said. Thus, the Spaniard was penalised for his part in the mayhem of the virtually worthless late race red flag restart, in which he tagged the right rear of Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin going off turn 1. This transpired when Lewis Hamilton pushed Alonso to the left on the approach to the corner, and Sainz, who had battled off Pierre Gasly under braking, ended up putting the Aston Martin into a spin, with Alonso making minor contact with the barriers. When more collisions caused the race to be red flagged before leader Max Verstappen had even completed a single sector, the racing order was virtually returned to what it was before the restart, meaning Alonso's race was set back to before the restart. Nevertheless, before the last rolling restart, which was completed with the race completely neutralised until the checkered flag, Sainz was quickly awarded a 5-second penalty. In the circumstances of the race, this proved disastrous, as Sainz was dropped to 12th and last place after crossing the finish line. This wasn't something the Spaniard had expected. "No, it cannot be, Ricky," he told race engineer Ricardo Adami after being told of the sanction. "Do I deserve to be out of the points? No, it's unacceptable. Tell them it's unacceptable. They need to wait until the race is finished and discuss with me." When ordered to copy, he pleaded, "No, please, ask them to wait and discuss with me. Clearly the penalty is not deserved. It is too severe." Speaking to the media after the race, Sainz said, "I think it's the most unfair penalty I've seen in my life. So before talking to you, I'm saying really bad stuff and bad words. I prefer to go back to the stewards, have a conversation with them, and maybe I can come back and talk to the media, because now I honestly cannot do it. It's too unfair, and I don't feel well to speak." He gave a similar statement to F1 TV, stating he was too angry, too disappointed to talk, and leaving quickly with the purpose of having the penalty rescinded. "I just needed to come to the TV pen, because if I didn't come, they put me another penalty. Sorry, I prefer not to talk. I'll come back later after going to the stewards." And Sainz wasn't the only one that felt the penalty was unjust, because after the race, Alonso defended Sainz, calling the penalty too harsh since the collision was part of racing. "Obviously, I don't know who touched me in the moment. I just felt it," Alonso said after the race. "In lap 1 of the first start, someone touched me in turn 3, and then in the last restart, Carlos apparently touched me in turn 1. Probably only in Jeddah I had the normal start. In Bahrain also, in turn 4, Lance touched me into turn 4. So yeah, I'm very attractive out there. But our car is strong enough, so it doesn't matter if they keep touching us. Probably the penalty is too harsh because on lap 1, it is very difficult always to judge what the grip level is. And I think we don't go intentionally into another car, because we know that we risk also our car and our final position. So sometimes you ended up in places that you wish you were not there in that moment, and it's just part of racing. I didn't see the replay properly, but for me it feels too harsh. For Sainz and Ferrari, the season just keeps on getting worse. But in general, the race ended a complete mess, and the other drivers were quick to point this out as well, and lashed out at the FIA once again. Max Verstappen, winner of the Australian Grand Prix, stated the red flag decisions made the race a bit of a mess, and directly contributed to the accidents at the last standing restart. Verstappen criticised the decision to raise the second red flag, saying the drivers will address it with the FIA at the next race, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, in late April. Of course, very happy to win the race, but I think the race itself towards the end was a bit of a mess with all the calls, Verstappen said. I don't think we needed that second red flag. I think that could have been done with a virtual safety car or a safety car at worst. We'll talk about it. I think it left a lot of drivers confused about why we needed a red flag. We'll talk in Baku. Verstappen feels the decision to red flag the race and employ a standing restart, similar to the late rush at the 2021 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, after Verstappen's tyre failure there, generated unnecessary confusion at the end. I just don't understand why we needed a red flag, he continued. I think if we would have had a safety car and then just have a normal rolling start, we wouldn't have had all these shunts. And then you have a normal finish. So they created the problems themselves. Fernando Alonso, who finished third, was taken aback by the deployment of the red flag throughout the race, not just the second. The first was sparked by Alex Albon's collision in turn 6, while the third and final red flag was raised in reaction to various crashes on the penultimate lap restart. I was surprised with all the red flags, to be honest, Alonso said. The first one I think was a Williams in turn 6, but we went through there one lap I think behind the safety car, and yeah, it was a bit of gravel, but nothing really too bad on track. But we never know if the car was going on the track itself, so apparently maybe one barrier was not properly fit there. So I think the FIA has more information than us. So if there is a red flag, it has to be for that reason. We will ask probably in Baku what was the reason for the second. I know there was a piece of tyre debris in the straight, but the car itself, it was like the inside of turn 4, so felt safe there. And the safety car is for those kind of reasons. For us, maybe it was a different opinion, but as I said, the FIA are the only ones that have all the cards on the table. So in those kinds of situations, we trust them and try to keep on going. The initial red flag for Albon's incident also did not please Grand Prix Drivers Association chief George Russell. It cost him dearly since he pitted from the lead during the first safety car and plummeted to 6th, but he also believed it was part of a pattern of unnecessary race interruptions. I thought the red flag was totally unnecessary, Russell said when asked. There was obviously quite a lot of gravel on the track on the racing line. We've seen it far worse in the past. It was reminiscent of the decision last week in Saudi when the safety car came out when the car, Lance Stroll's Aston Martin, was totally off the track. I don't really know what's going on with some of the decisions at the moment. We're all trying to work together with the FIA to improve things, but it's seemingly a bit of a challenge. The drivers are expected to have some words with the FIA management during the next race weekend at the end of the month. What are your thoughts on the race? Were the red flags needed? And is Sainz's penalty acceptable? And what about the race director Niels Wittich? Can he retain his position for the remainder of the season? Let us know your thoughts on the Australian Grand Prix in the comments down below. Thanks for watching today's video, and we'll see you in the next one.